Close your eyes and imagine yourself in a time when sleep was not a refuge, but a battleground. A time when doctors wielded tonics like weapons, and beds became instruments of control. Tonight, we drift back to the velvet curtained chambers of Victorian medicine, where the quest for rest spun treatments more terrifying than insomnia itself. Where patients spun like roast meat on mechanical beds, where children's cough syrup contained literal poison, and where a good night's sleep might cost you your sanity. But this isn't just a story of medical horrors. It's about the quiet desperation of sleepless nights, the rustle of starched nurse uniforms in gaslit wards, and the fragile line between remedy and torture. So settle deeper into your blankets, breathe slowly, and let us wander through this twilight world together. Picture yourself in a London bedroom, 1872. The air hangs thick with coal smoke and camphor, the only sounds your labored breathing and the persistent tick of a mahogany shelf clock. You haven't slept properly in months. Your physician calls it nervous exhaustion, but the treatments feel like fresh torments. Tonight, he's prescribed the Mitchell Rest Cure, 6 weeks of absolute bed rest in this darkened room. No books. No visitors. Not even the privilege of turning yourself over in bed. The nurse has just tightened your sheets in what they call packing, the linen wound so tight around your limbs you can barely twitch a finger. It's meant to calm your racing thoughts, but your heartbeat only grows louder in the enforced stillness. Through the slightly cracked door, you hear the hiss of gas lamps in the hallway, smell the faint metallic tang of the iron bed frame beneath you. Somewhere down the corridor, another patient's mechanical bed begins its ceaseless rotation, a treatment invented by Dr. Erasmus Darwin that turns sleep into a slow carnival ride. The rhythmic squeak of its pulleys joins the clock's ticking, counting down the hours until your next dose of chloral hydrate. Now consider the contents of that brown glass bottle on your nightstand. The label reads Mrs. Winslow's Soothing Syrup, its cheerful cursive belying the morphine and alcohol swimming inside. This is what Victorian mothers gave teething infants, what nervous ladies sipped like tea. You've learned to dread the thick, licorice-scented liquid, how it drags you under with iron claws, leaving you to surface hours later with cotton wool in your mouth and horrors in your memory. Last week, the newspapers reported another child dead from an overdose. But your doctor insists the benefits outweigh the risks. As the nurse lifts the bottle to your lips, you catch your reflection in its curved glass, pupils already dilating in anticipation of chemical oblivion. The treatments vary, but the rationale remains the same. In this era before understanding of sleep cycles, physicians believed nervous disorders stemmed from an excess of mental energy. The cure? Enforced passivity. For women, this often meant the rest cure you're enduring now. For men, more vigorous approaches like the Keeley cure, weeks of gold chloride injections meant to purge the desire for alcohol, but which left patients twitching through sleepless nights. And for the truly desperate, there was always the rotating chair at Bethlehem Hospital. You've heard whispers of it from the nurses, how Dr. Cox would strap patients into a suspended seat, spinning them until consciousness fled. Some emerged cured. Others merely broken. Yet life continues around your sick room. The nurse's starched apron crackles as she moves about, measuring your next dose. Through the window, distant carriage wheels clatter over cobblestones, their rhythm occasionally broken by a street vendor's cry. The smells of the hospital drift in carbolic acid, beef broth, the ever-present camphor. And always the ticking of that infernal clock, marking each second of your artificial rest. This is the paradox of Victorian sleep medicine, a world obsessed with rest that invented ever more elaborate ways to prevent true relaxation. Where the wealthy paid fortunes to be deprived of stimulation, all factory workers collapsed into exhausted slums after 16-hour shifts. Where children doped on opium slept through hunger pangs in workhouse dormitories. But what drove this medical obsession? To understand that, we must step away from your sickbed and into the minds of the physicians themselves. Let us now turn our attention to the man behind this peculiar torment. Silas Mitchell was not a monster, but a product of his time, a Philadelphia neurologist born in 1829, when medicine still clung to medieval humoral theories. Picture him in his study, the winter of 1873. Outside, snow muffles the clop of carriage horses. Inside, gaslight flickers across his collection of human skulls, each labeled with measurements of cranial capacity. He's writing what will become Wear and Tear, the treatise that popularized his rest cure. His pen scratches across the page, formulating prescriptions that will entomb thousands in therapeutic stillness, complete bed rest, isolation, excessive feeding. All designed to treat what he called the American disease, nervous exhaustion in upper-class women. Mitchell's own hands bear needle marks from self-experimentation with snake venoms. This was a man who truly believed in his methods. When Civil War soldiers flooded his hospital with phantom limb pain, he pioneered the West cure, sending male patients to ranches for vigorous outdoor activity. Yet for women, his prescription was the exact opposite. The contradiction never seemed to trouble him. In his mind, female physiology required containment, not expression. His private correspondence reveals a telling phrase: a woman's nervous system is like a watch spring wound too tight. Now imagine one of his first rest cure patients, let's call her Anna. A poet from Boston, admitted in 1874 hysteria. Her medical chart notes excessive literary pursuits as a contributing factor. For 7 weeks, she lies in a room papered with soothing green botanicals, forbidden to write or even hold a pen. Nurses massage her limbs with mercury lace creams, leaving silvery smears on the sheets. Each day, she's fed 8 meals of milk and rich meat, until her corset laces strain. Mitchell himself visits weekly, his beard smelling of camphor and pipe tobacco, delivering what he calls moral lectures about feminine duty. The treatment works, in its way. Anna stops writing poetry. She also stops laughing. Years later, she'll describe the experience as having my soul rubbed out with a greased cloth. The rest cure spread through elite medical circles like a slow-acting sedative. By 1880, variations appeared in London, Paris, and Vienna. Wealthy women submitted to it as both status symbol and punishment, a 6-week retreat where their only accomplishment was passive consumption. The treatment's physical details reveal its psychological intent: windows kept slightly ajar so patients could hear street life they were denied, beds positioned to view doors they couldn't approach. Even the enforced feeding carried symbolic weight, as if intellectual hunger could be smothered under slabs of rare beef. Yet the cure had its critics. Female physicians like Dr. Mary Putnam Jacobi noted the irony: patients arrived exhausted from domestic burdens, only to be infantilized into greater dependency. Some women rebelled in subtle ways. One hid Dickens' novels under her mattress, reading them by moonlight. Others developed what doctors called restlessness, a telling label for what we might now recognize as trauma responses. The very bodies meant to be calmed instead developed tics, muscle spasms, and in rare cases, full hysterical paralysis. What few realized was how Mitchell's own insomnia shaped his treatments. His personal diaries confessed to nights pacing his library, plagued by nervous storms. Perhaps this explains the almost religious fervor behind his methods: the physician who cannot heal himself, turning his frustrations outward. His later years saw him experimenting with animal electricity, trying to shock himself into sleep. The rest cure became a self-perpetuating industry, with sanitariums springing up like mushrooms after rain. Their advertisements promised nerve rejuvenation through the very deprivation that often exacerbated suffering. But the rest cure was merely one thread in a larger tapestry of sleep-related torment. To understand why these methods persisted, we must examine the cultural nightmares that birthed them. While the wealthy endured their orchestrated rest cures, an entirely different sleep crisis gripped Victorian England's working classes. Picture the airless attic of a London tenement, 1885. 5 children share a single straw mattress crawling with vermin, their breathing shallow from the perpetual miasma of coal dust and rotting food. This was the reality for millions, not medicalized insomnia, but exhaustion so profound it blurred the line between sleep and death. Factory whistles governed slumber, their shrieks partitioning the night into fragile fragments. For these souls, sleep wasn't a treatment to be prescribed, but a scarce commodity to be stolen between 14-hour shifts. The Victorian obsession with night air reveals much about their troubled relationship with sleep. Medical journals of the 1860s overflow with warnings about nocturnal breezes carrying everything from cholera to moral corruption. Wealthy households installed elaborate ventilation systems that hissed like sleeping dragons, while the poor sealed their windows with rags and newspaper, creating the very stagnant atmospheres doctors warned against. An 1873 Lancet article captured the paradox: the working man fears night air as he fears the devil, yet nightly suffocates in an airless crypt of his own making. Now consider the bedroom of a middle-class family, where these fears manifested in peculiar ways. The father sleeps upright in a specially designed anti-snoring chair, believing horizontal positions invited lung congestion. The mother rests with a metal sleeping helmet to protect against drafts, its ear flaps rendering her deaf to her children's nightmares. Their eldest daughter wears a ribbon tied loosely around her throat, a popular remedy against sleepwalking fits thought to be caused by tight corsets during the day. Through the wall, the grandfather's opium-laced cough syrup sits empty on his nightstand, its absence guaranteeing another night of rattling breaths. This was sleep as a minefield, every potential misstep laden with invisible threats. The Victorian bedroom became a battleground of competing theories. Some physicians advocated hard mattresses to prevent spinal curvature, while others prescribed feather beds to cushion the nerves. An 1880 patent for electro-sleep gloves promised to channel nerve-calming currents, while quack advertisements warned of nocturnal blood poisoning from improperly washed sheets. The wealthy took these admonitions to extremes. One aristocrat installed a system of pulleys to rotate his bed hourly, ensuring no limb would suffer circulatory stagnation. Yet for all this anxiety about sleep's mechanics, the Victorians fundamentally misunderstood its purpose. The popular notion of sleep as little death persisted well into the 1880s, with many fearing extended slumber might transition too smoothly into the real thing. This explains the chilling popularity of safety coffins among the wealthy, devices with bells and flags that could be activated should one wake underground. The same society that invented rotating beds also produced patent grave alarms, so deep ran their suspicion of prolonged unconsciousness. Industrialization further fractured natural sleep patterns. Factory whistles shattered circadian rhythms, while gas lighting confused the body's internal clock. An 1865 medical survey of Manchester cotton mill workers found most existed in a perpetual twilight, too exhausted at night for proper sleep, yet too sleep-deprived by day to function safely around machinery. The resulting accidents filled hospital wards with patients whose injuries then required more enforced bed rest. A cruel circle of sleeplessness and sedation. Perhaps most tragically, these fears manifested in the treatment of children. Orphanage records from 1871 show infants routinely dosed with quietness syrups containing opium, cannabis, and alcohol. Schoolmasters praised the orderly dormitory where small bodies lay unnaturally still, their breathing slowed by narcotics. Even loving parents followed physician-recommended schedules of crying it out that would be considered abusive today. The Victorian nursery was often the most sleep-deprived place in the household and consequently, the site of countless crib deaths later attributed to weak constitutions. Yet amid this landscape of sleep-related suffering, glimmers of progress appeared. German researchers began challenging the night air superstitions in the 1880s. Nurse training programs emphasized proper ventilation. And a growing contingent of physicians started questioning whether chloral hydrate truly cured insomnia, or merely erased the patient's memory of suffering through it. The stage was being set for a revolution in sleep science, but that story belongs to another century, and another episode. For now, let us turn our attention to those who profited from this collective anxiety, the inventors, salesmen, and showmen who transformed Victorian sleep troubles into a booming industry. The commercialization of sleep in Victorian England transformed nighttime rest into a bustling marketplace of quackery and innovation. Picture the Great Exhibition of 1851, where among the steam engines and crystal palaces, a mustachioed inventor demonstrates his somnolent reposer, a brass helmet connected to gas lines that promised scientific sleep through controlled asphyxiation. Crowds gather, equal parts horrified and fascinated, as a volunteer snores inside the contraption. This was sleep science as theater, where desperate hopes met entrepreneurial opportunism. Patent medicine vendors perfected the art of selling sleep in brightly colored bottles. Dr. Collis Brown's chlorodyne became a household name, its emerald glass glinting on nightstands across Britain. The formula, a mix of cannabis, chloroform, and morphine, temporarily silenced coughs, soothed nerves, and quietly addicted thousands. What the advertisements called a gentle lullaby in liquid form, medical journals eventually recognized as chemical captivity. Yet for factory workers facing another pre-dawn shift, or grieving parents with a teething infant, the immediate relief outweighed distant consequences. The Victorian pursuit of sleep became a cycle of intoxication and withdrawal, with each new remedy breeding fresh dependencies. Now consider the mechanical solutions that cluttered Victorian bedrooms. The nocturnal self-rocking cradle for adults, its pendulum mechanism creaking through the night. The galvanic sleep cap with its moistened electrodes promising brainwave normalization. Most bizarre of all, the pneumatic somnipulator, a leather mask connected to bellows that rhythmically compressed the sleeper's face. These contraptions reflected a deeper cultural anxiety, the fear that natural sleep was insufficient, that the human body required mechanical intervention to properly rest. Wealthy insomniacs became collectors of sleep aids, their bedrooms resembling alchemical laboratories with elixirs, magnets, and electrical gadgets. The language of sleep commerce grew increasingly florid. Advertisements warned of nocturnal blood stagnation and nerve rust, then offered salvation through purchased products. One 1883 pamphlet for Somnose tablets claimed they could store sleep like a battery stores electricity, take enough pills, and one could supposedly bank reserves of rest for future use. Such absurdities flourished because they spoke to a genuine need. In an age of gaslight and factories, when natural sleep rhythms collided with industrial schedules, people clung to any promise of control over their exhaustion. Yet amid this carnival of exploitation, genuine scientific progress quietly unfolded. German physicians began mapping sleep stages in the 1890s. The first clinical studies of sleep apnea appeared in the Lancet. And a growing contingent of nurses advocated for what we now call sleep hygiene: regular schedules, light meals before bed, proper ventilation. These evidence-based approaches struggled against more sensational alternatives, much as a whisper competes with a shout. The medical establishment, having invested so heavily in elaborate cures, proved reluctant to admit that better sleep might require neither machinery nor medication, but simply quieter, darker, more humane living conditions. As the century waned, a new understanding slowly dawned. The 1895 publication of Sleep and Its Derangements by Dr. William Hammond marked a turning point, the first major medical text to approach sleep as a natural process rather than a battle to be won. Hammond's radical suggestion? That many sleep disorders were actually rational responses to irrational living conditions. His prescription list was strikingly short: clean air, comfortable bedding, and the revolutionary notion that 8 consecutive hours might be superior to fragmented first and second sleep. Our journey through Victorian sleep obsession ends where modern sleep science begins, with the realization that true rest requires neither restraint nor stimulation, but balance. The spinning beds and chloral hydrate cocktails fade into medical history, leaving us with a simpler truth: sleep cannot be manufactured or forced, only invited. As you lie in your own bed tonight, consider how far we've come and how much remains unchanged. The Victorian era's greatest sleep-related revelation wasn't a device or drug, but the dawning awareness that in our nightly surrender to unconsciousness, we meet not an enemy to be conquered, but a natural rhythm to be honored. So let these stories of misguided remedies and earnest struggles drift through your mind like the last wisps of a fading dream. The clink of medicine bottles, the squeak of mechanical beds, the whispers of nurses in gaslit wards, all receding now into history. Your breathing slows, your eyelids grow heavy, and the comfortable darkness of your own safe sleep space envelopes you. No restraints. No tonics. Just a gentle, ancient rhythm of rest, reclaimed at last from the well-meaning tormentors of the past. Good night.